Imagine waking up in the middle of a pandemic, on an island you love, your life, safe, ordinary, and beautifully predictable, suddenly rearranged by a single message. A voicemail, a stranger's voice, a confession, your husband is having an affair. That moment fractures everything you believed about your past, your partner, and what it means to be known. Over the next few days, your husband leaves. He refuses to explain. He asks you to lie about it. He boxes up his life and walks out the door. The world is already unsafe. Inside your house, the ground drops away. This is the true story Belle tells in Strangers, a memoir of marriage. It's not a salacious tell-all. It is a careful, humane, and exacting account of what it feels like to be left without reason and how you start to live again. Part 1, The Blow. Chapter 1, The Osprey Nest and Spring on Martha's Vineyard. Spring arrives slowly on Martha's Vineyard, marked not by calendars, but by rituals that repeat themselves every year. One of these rituals is the return of the ospreys. High above Belle home sits a massive nest, rebuilt season after season, occupied by the same bonded pair. Her husband James watches them closely, explaining their habits, their loyalty, the way they circle back without hesitation. The birds become a quiet emblem of continuity, of things that last because they always have. In March 2020, as the pandemic tightens its grip on the world, Belle and her family retreat into a kind of forced closeness. Schools shut down. Travel halts. The island feels insulated, almost protected, and their days settle into a repetitive domestic rhythm. Remote schooling for the children, shared meals, fires in the hearth, long walks. The predictability is comforting. Marriage, family, and home feel stable, tested, perhaps, but intact. Belle's life at this moment is not dramatic. It is textured with ordinary concerns, keeping the household running, managing her children's emotional needs, and maintaining a sense of calm in an uncertain world. There are no warning signs large enough to signal what is coming. The marriage may not be perfect, but it feels real, lived in, and durable, like the osprey nest that has weathered countless storms. Chapter 2, The Voicemail. The rupture arrives without ceremony. Belle is doing something utterly mundane, mopping the kitchen floor, when her phone lights up with a voicemail from an unfamiliar number. She listens once, then again, struggling to process the words. A man introduces himself as the husband of a woman who has been having an affair with James. His voice is controlled, almost clinical. He is not calling to threaten. He is calling to inform. Shock arrives first, then disbelief. Belle calls James immediately. When he answers, he does not deny it. He admits the affair. He apologizes. At first, he minimizes it, suggesting it meant little, that it was a mistake. But the story refuses to stay small. The woman involved attempts suicide. The situation escalates beyond something that can be contained or rationalized. By the next morning, James leaves the island. He does not sit down for long conversations. He does not offer explanations that make sense. Instead, he sends brief messages, increasingly cold in tone. Within days, he tells Belle he wants a divorce. The speed is dizzying. There is no long unraveling, no drawn-out confession, just a sudden collapse of a life she thought she was standing on. Chapter 3, Panic, Parenting, and the First Days. Belle enters a state of crisis management. She still has 3 children to care for, meals to make, schedules to keep. The pandemic makes everything harder. There are no friends stopping by, no parents flying in, no physical comfort beyond the walls of her house. Every conversation happens through screens and phones. She tries, at first, to protect her daughters from the truth. She tells them their father is away temporarily. She keeps her own fear contained as best she can, breaking down only when she is alone, on the bathroom floor, in the quiet moments after everyone else is asleep. She reaches out to the people she trusts most: her mother, her stepmother Susan, close friends. Their support comes in fragments, constrained by distance and circumstance. James refuses therapy. He refuses to explain his reasoning. When Belle asks for clarity, for something that might make sense of the devastation, she receives none. Instead, she discovers that James is telling others a different version of events, one that smooths over the betrayal and recasts the separation as inevitable, even mutual. The most painful blow comes when James's siblings cut off contact with Belle entirely. In choosing to support him, they erase her from their lives. The family structure she believed she belonged to dissolves almost overnight. She is not just losing a husband, she is losing an entire network of relationships. Chapter 4. The Seaplane and the Farewell. James returns briefly to the island to tell the children that their parents are divorcing. The moment is surreal. He is distant, practical, strangely casual. He asks for food. He packs boxes. He looks for documents. The emotional weight of the moment seems to fall entirely on Belle, who must manage her children's reactions while processing her own shock. After he leaves again, this time more definitively, the reality sets in. This is not a pause. This is an exit. Legal paperwork follows soon after, delivered with formality that contrasts sharply with the emotional chaos it represents. Belle understands that whatever marriage she thought she had is already over, even if she does not yet understand why. Part 2. Family Roots in Young Belle. Chapter 5. The Skydance and How Couples Are Made. As Belle tries to make sense of her present, she looks outward and backward, searching for patterns. She returns to the OSPREYs, observing their elaborate skydance, the way pairs reconnect after long separations. These rituals offer a language for thinking about partnership, loyalty, and the shock of abandonment. Marriage, she realizes, is often understood through stories we tell ourselves about devotion, endurance, and mutual commitment. When those stories collapse, the loss is not only of a person but of a framework for understanding the world. Watching the birds rebuild their nest, year after year, forces Belle to confront the painful question of whether human bonds are as reliable as we hope. Chapter 6. Coming of Age, the Law, and Her Father's Death. Belle turns to her own beginnings. As a young woman, she loved writing and imagined a future shaped by words and ideas. A harsh critique early in her life, however, silenced that ambition. Seeking stability and approval, she pivoted toward law, entering a profession defined by rigor, hierarchy, and external validation. Her trajectory is abruptly altered by her father's sudden death while she is still a law student. The loss is seismic. Her father was charismatic, complicated, and deeply influential. His absence creates a vacuum that reshapes her sense of responsibility and adulthood. Grief becomes something she carries quietly, shaping her choices even when she does not fully acknowledge it. Chapter 7. Susan, the New Family, and Long Island Summers. After her father's death, Belle's stepmother Susan emerges as a stabilizing force. Susan provides continuity, warmth, and a model of care that Belle comes to rely on deeply. Their relationship grows into one of mutual respect and affection, offering Belle a sense of belonging that helps counterbalance earlier losses. Memories of Long Island Summers, shared meals, books, and conversations paint a picture of family life rooted in culture and curiosity. These experiences inform Belle's expectations of marriage, of partnership as something thoughtful, cultivated, and emotionally sustaining. Chapter 8. A Career at Davis Polk and Becoming James's Partner. Belle's career at an elite law firm immerses her in a world of ambition and prestige. The work is demanding, the environment competitive. It is here that she meets James. Their relationship develops quickly, shaped by shared intellect and professional intensity. They marry in 1999. The early years feel aligned and purposeful, marked by travel, shared plans, and the sense of building something together. Yet even at this stage, small compromises begin to accumulate. A prenuptial agreement is negotiated shortly before the wedding, revised in ways that favor James. At the time, Belle accepts the changes, trusting the marriage itself to provide security beyond any legal document. Only later will she understand how profoundly those early concessions shaped the terrain of her future. Part 3. Marriage, Praxis, and Fracture. Chapter 9. The Early Years, Compromises, and Domesticity. Marriage, in its middle years, is not built from dramatic moments but from accumulation. Belle describes her life with James as one structured by routines that felt permanent at the time. Shared meals, parenting rhythms, household habits that slowly hardened into expectation. They raised 3 children together, constructing a family life that appears outwardly stable and inwardly busy. James is practical and methodical, attentive to the physical details of home. Fires lit, systems maintained. while Belle balances work, motherhood, and the invisible labor of emotional continuity. There are small irritations that seem trivial then but later acquire meaning. James eats directly from serving bowls. He approaches money cautiously, almost possessively. Belle adapts, defers, smooths edges. Compromise becomes second nature, not framed as sacrifice but as the ordinary glue of marriage. She absorbs the idea that partnership requires flexibility, that harmony is maintained through quiet accommodation. Belle also grapples with the identity shift that comes from marrying into wealth and pedigree. She becomes aware of subtle hierarchies, of how money shapes power even when it is not spoken about directly. Still, she believes the marriage itself is solid. These are not cracks, she thinks, just the ordinary frictions of a long life shared. Chapter 10. The Prenup and the Paper Trail. The prenuptial agreement returns to the center of Belle's life with devastating force. What once felt like a formality, an uncomfortable but forgettable document, now dictates the terms of her financial future. Belle recalls how the prenup was revised shortly before the wedding, the changes narrowing her protections. At the time, she trusted James and the institution of marriage more than any legal contingency. After James leaves, the prenup becomes his primary instrument. He insists on its strict enforcement, framing the divorce as a contractual matter rather than a moral or relational one. Belle experiences this as a second betrayal. The document reduces years of shared life, caregiving, and partnership into clauses and percentages. It defines value narrowly, ignoring everything that cannot be quantified. Belle refuses to collude in silence. When James suggests presenting the separation as amicable, she declines. Truth, even when uncomfortable, becomes essential to her survival. The paper trail, emails, texts, legal filings, accumulates, each document reinforcing the reality that this is not a misunderstanding but a systematic withdrawal. Chapter 11. The First Legal Moves. The divorce becomes real when certified papers arrive. James files first. The language is impersonal, precise, stripped of any acknowledgement of shared history. Belle reads the documents carefully, understanding both their legal significance and their emotional message. The marriage is being dismantled with efficiency. Conversations with James are brief and transactional. He is unmoved by her requests for explanation or fairness beyond the contract. At times, his tone is dismissive, even mocking. Belle begins to understand that clarity will not come from him. If she wants coherence, she will have to build it herself. She starts to record events meticulously, writing down what happened and when. This act is not revenge but preservation. Memory becomes something she must actively protect against erasure. The written record becomes a quiet assertion that her experience is real, coherent, and worthy of being documented. Chapter 12. The Children and the Small Salvations. Throughout the legal escalation, Belle's focus remains on her children. She shields them from adult conversations and legal details, working to preserve a sense of safety. When one child must leave the island, Belle calls the family involved, ensuring care and continuity. These gestures are acts of resistance against chaos. Food becomes a form of care. Belle cooks deliberately, grounding herself and her daughters through shared meals. Her daughter, Evie, steps into the kitchen, preparing risotto and arancini, offering nourishment not just to the body but to the fragile emotional structure of the household. These moments do not erase grief, but they make it survivable. Part 4. Public Life, Writing, and Reclaiming the Narrative. Chapter 13. Writing as Therapy. Alone with the aftermath of her marriage, Belle returns to writing. It is not a calculated career move, but an instinctive one. Writing offers structure when life feels unmoored. As a young woman, she had abandoned the idea of being a writer after receiving a devastating critique. Now, stripped of the identity she built through marriage, she reaches for the abandoned part of herself. She enrolls in a memoir writing class conducted over Zoom. The setting mirrors her isolation, faces in small boxes, voices filtered through screens, but the effect is transformative. Belle begins drafting her story, reading it aloud, receiving feedback. Each page restores a measure of agency. The act of shaping language becomes a way of shaping reality. Chapter 14. Legal Strategy and the Counterclaim. Writing soon intersects with law. Belle's legal team advises her to file a counterclaim. Unlike James's filing, which reduces the marriage to contractual terms. The counterclaim lays out the emotional and practical harm she has endured. It is not vindictive, but it is assertive. The counterclaim becomes another narrative document, one that insists on context. It reframes the divorce as the consequence of unilateral abandonment rather than mutual drift. Belle understands that legal recognition matters, not only for financial security but for dignity. The process is exhausting, but it marks a shift from defense to self-advocacy. Chapter 15, The Essay and Its Aftermath. Belle publishes an essay describing her experience. The response is immediate and overwhelming. Messages arrive from readers who recognize their own stories in hers, who thank her for articulating a kind of abandonment that often goes unnamed. For many, her words validate private pain. The backlash is equally intense. Tabloids seize the story, reframing Belle as privileged, vindictive, or manipulative. The Daily Mail publishes a particularly harsh piece that distorts her background and motives. Belle feels exposed, misunderstood, and publicly judged. Yet she does not regret writing. The story, once told, cannot be taken back, and she no longer wants it to be. Chapter 16, Community, Meetings, and the Small Cruelties. As the divorce unfolds, Belle becomes acutely aware of how communities respond to disruption. Some friends remain steadfast, offering quiet loyalty. Others withdraw, uncomfortable with conflict or eager to maintain neutrality. A few align openly with James, accepting his version of events without question. Every interaction carries weight. Conversations at the tennis club, brief exchanges on porches, silences that speak louder than words. Belle learns how easily narratives shift when people choose convenience over truth. These social wounds are smaller than the marital rupture but cumulative, reinforcing her sense of isolation. Still, she continues. She writes. She parents. She endures meetings, legal calls, and ordinary days. Slowly, she recognizes that reclaiming her narrative is not about persuading everyone, it is about refusing to disappear. Part 5, Building a New Nest. Chapter 17, Settlement and Practical Freedom. The legal end of the marriage arrives without celebration. There is no single moment of triumph, no clean emotional release. Instead, there is a settlement, complex, negotiated, shaped by the prenuptial agreement that once seemed abstract and now governs the edges of Belle's future. Accounts are divided, property decisions finalized, documents signed. Each administrative step is both a relief and a reminder of what has been lost. Belle retains the house and the apartment, anchoring her children in familiar spaces. On paper, this looks like stability. In reality, it requires enormous effort. Refinancing, legal restructuring, and the constant vigilance needed to maintain what has been preserved. Freedom, she learns, is not the absence of responsibility, but the ability to shoulder it without being erased. The settlement does not deliver emotional closure. James does not offer insight or apology beyond what he has already given. The ending is procedural rather than moral. Belle accepts that the law can resolve assets, but it cannot restore meaning. What it can do is clear the ground enough for something new to grow. Chapter 18, Joy, Dragonflies, and Small Signs. Life resumes in fragments. Belle begins to notice moments of lightness that feel almost illicit at first. Dragonflies appear in swarms, catching her attention again and again. She learns that dragonflies symbolize transformation and self-realization, creatures that spend much of their lives unseen before emerging fully formed. The symbolism resonates deeply. She returns to writing with discipline. Early mornings become sacred. Words arrive more freely now, no longer blocked by fear or self-doubt. Writing is no longer therapy alone. It is craft, intention, and commitment. Through language, Belle claims an identity that exists independently of marriage. Joy is quieter than it used to be, but it is also more honest. It appears in conversations with her daughters, in shared laughter, in the calm of evenings unshaped by conflict. These moments are not dramatic, but they are real, and they accumulate. Chapter 19, Encounters and the Man Who Waves. Years later, Belle encounters James on the street. He smiles and waves, a gesture casual enough to suggest familiarity, distant enough to confirm separation. The moment is brief but charged. She recognizes him as someone she once loved deeply, and as someone whose choices reshaped her life irrevocably. There is no confrontation, no desire for one. Belle understands now that she will never receive the explanation she once needed so desperately. What she has instead is perspective. James is not a villain carved in absolutes. He is a flawed human being, the father of her children, a man capable of kindness and profound harm. The encounter affirms something essential. She can stand in the same space as him without losing herself. Survival has quietly become strength. Epilogue: what remains? The Ospreys return, as they always do. Their nest stands intact, weathered but functional, rebuilt piece by piece after each season of absence. Belle reflects on what these birds have represented throughout her life: continuity, partnership, instinct, and resilience. Her story does not resolve into certainty. Some questions remain unanswered, some silences endure, but she has learned that understanding every motive is not a prerequisite for living fully. Meaning can be built from acceptance as much as from explanation. The marriage ended, but her life did not. It expanded in unexpected directions, toward creativity, autonomy, and a deeper relationship with truth. What remains is not bitterness, but clarity. Belle Burden's journey is not about triumph over another person. It is about reclaiming authorship over one's own life. Through loss, legal battles, public scrutiny, and private grief, she discovers that identity does not dissolve when a marriage ends. It reconfigures. Part 5 closes the memoir where it truly belongs, not in anger or resolution, but in quiet confidence. Belle stands within a life she has rebuilt deliberately, aware of its fragility and committed to its care. Like the nest above her home, it is not untouched by storms, but it is hers and it holds.